All right. We should be live. Yep. Welcome back, John.
Hey, welcome back, Jas. What's you up to, man?
Nothing much. Watching movies.
What's going behind the black curtain?
The black curtain? No, no. The literal black curtain is a mess back there. The
Yeah.
figurative black curtain, there'll be news on Facebook probably later today, later tomorrow.
Okay, I see, I see.
So, yeah. So, don't pay attention to the literal black curtain.
Okay. It's not even there.
It's not there, no. So, what's up? What have you been doing? What have you've been watching?
Well, actually saw I was talking to you off streaming. I've been watching the going back to Twin Peaks because I bought the third season on Blu-ray. I'm finally gonna catch up with that. And going back to the original series, the first two seasons, saw again Fire Walk with me. And it's been pretty enjoyable to go back to something that I haven't seen like in a good 15 years and gain a new appreciation for it. Even though I liked it at first to begin with. So that and really like the tone. I think Fire Walk with Me, hopefully with time, has kind of like re- gotten more of an admiration of its audience than it did back then because everybody was like, "Oh, like you're changing the tone of Twin Peaks. Where's the quirkiness? Where's the good American Pie goofiness to it? Where's like the, kind of like the small town folk charisma of it?" And it's true that part is changed, but the movie does have a little. It is also a darker story because about Laura Palmer and her final days before she gets killed by Bob, and it's a great watch. And one thing that I always gathered from David Lynch movies that if you're an actor, he might be one of the best directors to work for because you'll go through the array of emotions that any actor can ask for. Like Cheryl Lee is great in this movie, and like she goes from like Dryden to like a vixen and to like like a tender teenager to like a fully grown woman and this doom waif, and it's like such an array of of emotions that she goes through, and she pulls it off so well. It's almost kind of like you wish that she would have had more of a spotlight in her career that she did, even though she did some stuff like a lot. I was she was in John Carpenter's Vampires, and she did some Rescue Diaries. And then she did some movie Bliss, Blood Oranges, but it was always that sort of like mid 90s kind of like sensual thriller
Mm-hmm.
type of deal. But really good actress. I really like her work in the show, and also uh another character actor, Ray Weiss is fantastic as Leland Palmer. Um, Once again, one of those guys who's kind of turned to like a cult actor, with RoboCop, obviously Twin Peaks, appearances on TV shows and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But that guy has like another, like just a full arsenal of talent of many things that he can do, and it's cool that going back to the show and because of its gold status that those performances and actors are still appreciated. And you know,
Ray
I get to
Weiss
go
is cool
back.
because he can pull off the over the top villain, but he can also do like the average, the average Joe dad who's just there to dispense calm advice, not anything extreme, not anything. Because I've seen him do that role a couple times,
Mhm.
and he's just like he's so chill in the role. He's so good at it, but at the same time, he can be in RoboCop and he can be the heel, you know.
It could be Leo Nash.
I
Oh!
don't know
Get
if he has
off
the
of
energy for
me,
that.
man!
The melting man.
Yeah.
Get off me, man. Yeah.
But yeah, and he actually does both well in Twin Peaks. I mean, he goes from kind of like the loving father to being the killer possessed by a demon.
Right.
And he has to kind of toe the line between those things, and sometimes all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So no, he was great. You know what I mean? That's what the whole show, like, it does have its, after the revelation of Laura Palmer's, killer, there's about a good, maybe 6 episodes more or less where like nothing really happens, or what happens is almost kind of like you could tell that David Lynch wasn't as involved in the creative process, or maybe he took a step back.
Mhm.
But towards the end, it really builds up again, and that final episode of the second season is fantastic.
Yeah,
So
that episode
it,
is good.
yeah, that episode's awesome, and it's been cool. I can't wait to see the third season, see how it plays out. So I hear good things about it, but I hear it was more along the lines and tone of Fire Walk with Me than the original show.
See, I haven't
So
seen Fire Walk with Me, and I watched the original 2 seasons, and
mm,
we're weird fans of David Lynch. You're more of a fan of some of his stuff than I am, and I'm more of a fan of some of his other stuff than you are. When it comes to Twin Peaks, I don't know. I just can't get into weird for being weird. Like weird for weird's sake doesn't really do it for
well,
me.
the thing about this, it is weird, but there's always a reason why the weirdness happens. It's just kind of like everything has to be played out, and you have to be very patient to see how everything is connecting.
And that's why I said by the time I finished the second season, I was like, okay, it's worth for me dealing with all that stuff just to get to the end of the second season.
Hmm.
However, I saw most of the third season and I stopped watching because I'm like, okay, this is just weird because he needs to be weird and it has to be weird and it's weird because it's weird and it's not like this intricate puzzle where it's like, oh, there was this weird little creature here, but if you look in the back of this scene when he's talking about this, it connects to that and that's why this was here and you could kind of piece together this bizarre puzzle. No, it just seems like, okay, there's a weird talking tree. Okay, there's a weird bush on fire. Okay, it's like, okay, why are these things there? Why? Oh, there's a weird fog that creeped in and then went away. Why? You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like none of that shit goes anywhere in the third season. And I could be wrong because I never finished it, but
Well, my friend told me that he saw the whole thing. He said that like he recredits Mark Frost, who was the co-creator of Twin Peaks, to actually kind of like railing in
uh-huh.
David Lynch and kind of like keeping the story focused. Contrasting with David Lynch's sort of like
Craziness.
surrealist, craziness. So I'm looking forward to see how it plays out. You know what I mean? So
I guess our relationship is kind of like Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, where Justin Roiland likes to be wacky for the sake of being wacky. And
yeah.
Dan Harmon's the one that likes it to tie together into a story, not just random stuff happening.
Well, it came in. I guess it comes in handy when you're, I guess, making a TV show where
Mm-hmm.
perhaps things need to connect and some more. You know, what I mean,
That
maybe
actually makes
you have
sense.
to, or at the very least, you have to mix the experimental with something that's a little bit more narrative cohesive.
Structured, yeah.
Exactly. So, look, I'll say this much though: the fact that that show came out in like what 1991, like that in itself, it was a network show. That's crazy, man. Because if you really think about it, it's really a story of incest. It's a father that raped and killed his daughter. That's crazy. I mean, with all the subtleties and all the supernatural element, it comes down to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was, even though it was a short-lived phenomenon, the fact that it held the nation's interest for like a year more or less, it's pretty impressive considering how bizarre that show is. I mean, it captured people's imaginations.
Why did it get canceled in the second season? Was it canceled because of lack of viewership, or?
What I read was that there were the network forced Lynch and Frost to reveal the Laura Palmer killer because they were saying there's already been the suspense has been building up too much, and people just want to get the audiences are starting to get desperate for an answer before it just becomes stale.
Hmm.
Obviously, the way Lynch and Frost saw it is that everything sprawls around this death, and all the other narratives, all the other arcs are going to evolve around this. But they were forced to kind of like show their hand, and once they did, the show had a hard time getting back into traction, and people just lost interest. I mean, after that it was like a spiral down. So
Yeah,
I
it
mean, it
makes
only
sense.
lasted like really, it's only 30 seasons. I mean, 30 seasons. It's only like
30
30
seasons.
episodes.
Jesus, I missed a
30
whole bunch of
seasons.
seasons.
Yeah, it's like that's like East Enders or something like that. Like canon. But yeah. After that, the ratings went down, and I guess something that bizarre can only hold enough of
Sure,
mainstream interest for so long.
sure.
Then again, I know. I wonder if that show would have been done, let's say 2000, like now, 2016, 2017, like would have actually been able to be a little bit given the free reins that it was back then. now with all these streaming services, you know, I mean, there's more of an ability for perhaps creators to be a little bit more at ease to develop their ideas. You know.
Well, watch the new season. Maybe I'll force myself to watch the whole third season, start to beginning, and we'll have a talk about it afterwards and see if some of the liberties that they have now may have paid off.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll check it out.
Cool.
So
Well, the
besides,
main subject that we're here for is Bright versus Alienation, or Alienation versus I Want to Be Alienation.
yes, Netflix. I think $90 million foray into the sci-fi action genre. They already tried the political satire with that Brad Pitt movie. Man, this was embarrassing. Like they did. I forget titles while I'm like here live. I should know this by heart, but so far their movies with Spectral, the one I saw that Brad Pitt did. So far, it's still a work in progress for Netflix. You know, so
It's weird because their TV shows are good, but they somehow their like feature filmmaking is it's kind of lacking something.
well, it's definitely not star power. I mean, those guys are getting paid $20 million per movie to show up. So
Well, that's a good place to start, man. With Bright, I think Will Smith was that guy showed that was a paycheck movie. He showed up to get his
what was the
paycheck.
last time there wasn't a paycheck movie for him?
Well, I mean,
Maybe
at
Suicide.
least sometimes he
maybe.
tries, but in this one, it was like straight up paycheck movie. Straight up, okay. Go ahead and write me my 5 Will Smith one-liners. Go ahead and write me making some quips, and then a couple action scenes. I'll show up for those. Give me my paycheck, and then I want to go home and like drink a beer
He probably was drinking a beer while he was shooting that movie.
or 2 or 3. Yeah.
Or 2 or 3.
Yeah, I don't know. It really felt he felt completely not into it. His one-liners were horrible, and it just. I mean, that whole movie is really flat, but I thought his performance specifically stood out for being really flat and phoned in.
I think Will Smith does the same crap for many years. He's been doing Big Willie. You know what I mean? Like there's some exceptions, like Pursuit of Happiness, which I thought he was excellent in that. Even some things like I Am Legend showed some depth to the typical Will Smith hero archetype, where I mean he's a little bit gloomier, there's a little more subtlety to it. But I would say the last couple of years, when he's not Oscar baiting, like doing Concussion, where it's like tell me the truth with some terrible like African accent he's trying to pull off, like pretty much he does the same thing, which is like show up, be cool, like you said, say a couple good jokes. Like I'm surprised he doesn't like look straight into the camera and just break the fourth wall and go like,
right.
That's pretty much what he's been up to lately. But in this one particularly, he really didn't give a crap. Like he was just like, whatever, man. I'm just gonna show up and do this stupid movie where I follow some orc around. Really, there wasn't much to his performance except just him showing up and just being Will Smith, I guess.
Well, that's where we can start some of the comparisons between, because I mean, when I was watching Bright, the first thing I thought was this is Alienation, but instead of sci-fi, you're substituting fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the whole thing I thought the entire time, which made me go back to see Alienation, and I realized, holy crap, Alienation actually has a really good script and keeps you engaged and tells a really good story. As where with Bright, I was like bored watching the thing. At the beginning, I don't know. I've watched it twice. I don't know if I just keep missing it, but it seems like the world building isn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, oh hey, there's orcs and there's fairies and there's elves, and one's a cop. Okay, here's the story. And I thought Alienation did more world building than that, and they actually don't. Mm-hmm. If you want to compare the two, the world building is more or less equivalent. However, with Alienation, the aliens that they introduce and how they introduce them, the interactions between them, you actually start to care, especially for the lead guy, George. Mm-hmm. Almost right off the bat. Where with the orc from Bright, I could barely like give a shit. And I mean, he looked like a nice guy. That's the most I could say is like, okay, he looked like he was trying to be a decent orc, I guess. But I didn't really give a shit. And then, like, okay, to start it there. So the movie starts off with Will Smith getting shot, blasted by a shotgun. And the idea is that the orc, I forgot his name, couldn't save him or couldn't catch the guy who shot him with the shotgun. Mm-hmm. Here's where the problems already start. This is the first orc that has become a cop. Mm-hmm. His first human partner gets shot in front of him with a shotgun, and he fails to catch the guy who shot him. And then the police department is going to force them to still be partners? You don't think that's going to make the human cop go, screw this guy, whenever somebody's aiming a shotgun at his chest, I'm going to let him get blasted and then pretend to chase off the guy. Like, that just automatically starts off with, like, what are you even thinking?
Well, even what was awkward is that there wasn't a much of a build-up to how these guys, the dynamics between these two guys.
Right. Yeah, not much. There wasn't any. That's literally the beginning of the movie, is he gets blasted by a shotgun. By an orc. That's it.
Yeah, it was pretty... It was hard to kind of, like, even if you want to establish a whole buddy cop drama where it's kind of like the whole opposites attract things, you know, that's obviously the motif in these type of movies. Like, you want to kind of get a hint of their dynamic first. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Obviously, the orc, you know, playing, you know, the good guy cop, and he's kind of like trying to, like, you know, kind of like redeem himself as being an orc and being an officer of the law. And you get the cynical, you know, aged, you know, cop with Will Smith. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel like you going into, like, what is their dynamic in their chemistry.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that was the first thing the movie kind of, like, had a shortcoming on.
That was the first one. And the second one was them being forced to still work together. I mean, why are you going to trust a guy who let you get shot by a shotgun in your chest, in front of your face, and then failed to catch the guy who shot you? Why are you going to trust this guy as a partner? And why are you going to force them to be partners?
And what's weird, then afterwards, everybody's pissed off at Will Smith. Everybody's like, whoa, you got to, like, you know, like, throw this guy under the bus, or you got to, like, find a way to, like, get rid of this guy. And it's like, dude, like,
yeah, that should have been one of his first one-liners. One of his first one-liners was to look at one of the other human cops and be like, nah, bitch, I got shot because of this guy. And I told the police chief to get me away from this guy. And she said no.
Like, everybody's still paying the fault on him throughout the course of the movie. And it's like, dude, he doesn't want this situation either. No.
It's ridiculous. And then, see, but by contrast, you have Alien Nation. Alien Nation, he starts off with a human partner. Mm-hmm. And right at the beginning, the human partner gets shot by one of the aliens, which the slang term for them is slag. So he gets blown away by a slag. And James Caan goes after this guy, trying to get the guy who shot him. And he ends up punching another slag cop in the face, which is the first slag, because I don't know what their species name is, so I'm just going to keep using the derogatory term. The first slag cop, he punches him in the face when he's trying to help him, and he doesn't give him attitude because he realizes he was just chasing down a guy who beat his ass. Mm-hmm. You know, he punched me because he thought it was him, and then he realized he wasn't. He calmed the hell down. With some gripes, James Caan's acting when the partner gets killed was really weird to me, because it wasn't like it was an 80s movie, and it wasn't this dramatic thing. It was more like, oh, my partner got killed. I guess I'll have to find who did it. And that's it. You don't really ever get more out of him than that. There isn't this like, oh my God, he's dead, I gotta go to the funeral.
That's James Caan not understanding what type of movie he's in.
I guess so.
Come on, dude. This is the guy who did Thief and The Godfather. And right. He's like stuck doing like some garbage alien B movie like in like late 80s, because like that's the only role I can get at this point.
Sure. I could be But then you see he goes and he starts to do this investigation to find the guy who killed his partner. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that chooses up to team up with the other detective, George. And so that right there, it's already a little more interesting, because it's not a guy who wants to get away from his partner. It's a guy who chose a partner. I mean, basically simply because of race, because maybe it'll help him find the guy that he's trying to find easier.
Mhm.
Not because he cares, not because of anything like that. It's just maybe this guy's going to make my life easier in finding the guy who killed whatever. But right off the bat, they start with some really good relationship building between these two characters. Because, I mean, George, the first thing he says is like, why do you want to be my partner? And I forgot exactly what James Caan character says, but it's essentially, you're going to help me try and find this guy. And we're not friends, but you're going to help me.
Mhm.
And then, but it's not even that. It's the little things that happen just between the time they leave the precinct to the time they get to the car. They're like, he starts, they both start walking towards the car. And James Caan turns to him and he goes, what's your, he's like, you're Detective Francisco. What's your first name? And he's like, Sam. And James Caan looks at him like, Sam Francisco? He's like, no, I'm going to call you George. I hope you don't mind that I'm changing your name, but I'm calling you George. I'm not going to introduce you to other people like Sam Francisco. And he's like, fine. He's like, I hope you don't mind that I'm changing your name. And he's like, no, I don't mind. Go ahead and call me George. But he's like, you have to understand, for you, there's something about your name for us that kind of makes it awkward. And he's like, what is that? And he's like, well, your name is Detective Sykes. And Sykes reminds us of two words. C. Ikes, which means excrement from an anus and head. So his name is Detective Shithead. And it's like, but already there, it starts like that buddy cop drama where they're like already ragging on each other. They don't really like each other yet, but they're like ragging on each other and starting to build some kind of rapport. So right there, you already have way more reason to root for these two characters than you do in the first half hour of seeing Bright. I mean, I don't know what your experience was with that, but that seems like way better, like a way better reason to kind of have those two characters together.
I think the problem is that in this film is that there's not a lot of with Bright is that there's not a lot of like build up to why these characters go about their MacGuffins.
Right.
You know what I mean? About the reasons they actually go about their actions. Just things kind of like progress because the story needs to move forward and it goes from there. But there's not a lot of reason that makes you like connect with these characters, or like you said, in Joel Ellinger's character, the orc, you can tell he's a nice guy. You can tell there's something you could root for, but there's no reason why you would root for him. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and there's also the differences. There's a differences between the orc and George. For me in Bright, the orc always looked like the first time he shot the gun, he looked like, holy shit, I've never shot a gun before. The first time he got shot at, it was like, holy shit, I've never been shot at before. And it's like, dude, did you not go through any police training? Like, none of this is even remotely familiar to you. I understand it's maybe your first beat, but Jesus, there's nothing like even shooting a gun. It's like, oh wow, this happened.
Dude, he seemed like somebody that like almost got switched from like one profession to the other overnight.
Yeah, right there, right. And then that's it. It's
even
like, here, you're not an accountant anymore. You're a cop. And he's like, holy crap.
There's no kind of like, at the very least, like some sort of textbook how I would proceed according to this situation.
Right.
It's almost kind of like, oh crap, this is what I got to deal with as a police officer.
Which is interesting because by contrast, George in Alien Nation is a very straight-laced, like by the book kind of character.
Well, he understands procedure. Like he understands the foundations of his profession.
Yes, and he's okay with handling a gun. He's okay with ducking when they're firing at him. It doesn't seem like any of this is shocking. It seems like this is part of the job.
Oh, that's what you're supposed to do with shooting like shotguns at you, like just duck and cover.
Typically, just duck and cover. Doesn't duck and cover save you from everything, including atomic bombs?
So South Park taught us that,
right?
So yeah.
So, but I mean, it's already there. Look at how many things, and this is not even part of the main story. And the two differences
we haven't even gotten there yet.
No, we haven't even gotten there. It's like so now you have, okay, in Alien Nation you have the guy's partner got killed and he's trying to find the killer, and during the course of that they stumble onto something bigger where there's a guy who's making a drug who was used to enslave the slags when they were on the ship, and it seems like it's a cross between like cocaine and heroin. So the harder you work, the more drugs you got, which is why they stayed as slaves. And then obviously George loses his shit when he sees this because he doesn't want humans to know about this drug. And second, he doesn't want this drug to be around because his people are going to end up falling into slavery again. But that's already, look at that motivation. That's a good motivation. The orc wanted to be a cop. Why are you putting your life at risk? Because I wanted to be a cop. I always wanted to be a cop. It sure as shit doesn't look like it by the way you react to every freaking situation. Like, I mean, you would think this guy's watched every cop drama. He's watched every cop TV series. He watched, the first 8 seasons of Chips, if there were 8 seasons, 100 times. Like, he would have been so knee deep in this that none of this would have been surprising. But no, instead, what we get is like, I really wanted to be a cop. That's all I know. But I don't know anything about it.
It seems like the bigger problem is not that he's an orc in the police department, but that he's incompetent.
Yeah,
and that's incompetence actually even worse than him being an orc.
Yeah.
That should be the major gripe in the movie, but...
And then there's a thing with the orc. Like, the orc has his tusks shaved down. So there's a whole thing that he's seen as a lesser class of orc because he doesn't have his tusks. I could see that as making a more interesting situation for him when he's dealing with other orcs. But it doesn't really help him in any way. And by contrast, George doesn't have any real... I mean, sure, some people give him shit because he's a cop. And some of the other aliens give him shit because he's a cop. But he never really has anything against his people. In fact, he's trying to help his people.
Mm-hmm.
And even without that extra layer of, like, of friction to cause, to spin off some more narrative elements... George is still more interesting, even when he doesn't have that extra level of friction.
Mm-hmm.
And this orc guy just comes off as, yeah, okay, I don't know how to be a cop. I'm obviously not a very good orc. It's, what are you good at? What are you good at? I mean, he wasn't even good at getting a burrito. He didn't even know what kind of sauce his fucking partner liked for his burrito before he got blasted by a shotgun.
Yeah, he's just... he's just kind of there, I guess. They needed a character to be an orc who, I guess, fits the whole mythology of that film, I guess.
Who wasn't too much of an asshole.
But, yeah, I felt that, it was, for a body cop movie, like, I won't say there wasn't any chemistry between the two actors, but there wasn't much that was given to them that they could actually build up on something that you would actually
want to root for.
Invest in.
Yeah. I agree. I think there wasn't any of that. And part of I guess, if I could point out where you can do something by writing and you can do something by action, I think these two movies show two very different methods of trying to engage an audience and keep them interested. Like, when I started watching Alien Nation, for instance, I watched it again a couple days ago, and I said I was only going to watch the first half hour because it was late, and I realized an hour in, I'm like, holy crap, I'm still watching this thing, because every scene is a new bit of information, and every scene makes you interested in getting to the next scene. And it's not action. It's him trying to find people, he's interacting with other aliens, he's trying to get information from this guy. He's learning about his partner. He's doing this. And it just keeps unfolding in a way that you're engaged the whole time. As where with Bright, the way that it tries to keep the audience engaged is, okay, we have this cop situation. We're called into this place. Oh my God, there's this wand that is a very, it could be a very harmful weapon. We need to keep it from all the bad guys. All the bad guys want to kill us. And now the shooting starts, and it's not going to stop until the movie's over.
I think the biggest problem with this film is that it's actually feels to me like a pilot for a TV show.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, between the corrupt cops that want to kill him, the elves that are following them, the thing with the magic wand, the mythology behind that, and then the whole relationship with the cop and the orcs. That's like 4 movies in one.
Mm-hmm.
None of them get developed correctly. This movie kind of reminds me of a little bit. It's kind of like those mid-90s kind of like urban thrillers, kind of like it reminded me a lot actually of Judgment Night. That's what came to mind. Kind of like characters out of their element.
Mm-hmm.
situation where they have to kind of survive the night.
Right.
So it kind of toned to it, but it was, which I appreciate it, but it doesn't really do much with that. It's just the feeling of it. It doesn't really really lead anywhere.
Well,
And like I said,
it's the bare
it's like four
skeleton of
TV
that.
things going on at once where you don't redevelop any of them.
Yeah.
One ends, the other one starts from kind of bleeds in. That ends, the other one kind of bleeds in there. And what I wanted to point out something that was interesting is that Alien Nation's running times is an hour and 30 minutes, and Bright's about 2 hours. So it's almost half an hour more. It almost kind of feels like all these screenwriters are so hungry to make stories about world building and creating this mythology, whereas kind of you lose sight in the basic story that you have in hand. Ultimately, it's about the two guys,
right?
And focus how they actually get out of a particular situation. What I mean? But now it's kind of like, no, but look, there's this huge other arc, this huge other world they're going to be a part of, this universe we're creating, where it's kind of like it all feels very incomplete. It reminds me, in that sense, it reminds me a little bit of the Matrix Revolutions, where it's like all these things get thrown out and lead nowhere.
Yeah.
So I think that was a little bit of one of the big problems the movie had.
Yeah, and before I started watching Alien Nation again, I because Alien Nation wasn't just Alien Nation, it was Alien Nation, and then it spun off into, I believe, 3 TV movies and a 2-season TV series.
Yeah, it was a TV show for Fox.
So I remember more of the history of these aliens and what they went through. And so in my head, I thought they did a lot more of that world building in that first movie. And they don't. By comparison, they're the same, like I said before. But you care more for the characters in Alien Nation than you do in Bright. And then also, just to point out something, there was a scene in Bright where I saw a dragon flying over the city.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that more of a problem than a couple asshole orcs having a fire-breathing dragon over your city? Because I think that would kind of need more resources than at least a mention. By the way, did you notice the giant fire-breathing dragon that flew over the ghetto? No, we're not going to talk about that? Okay. Just wondering. Because maybe we need a rocket launcher. I don't know.
It was a small detail that when you have a $9 million movie Netflix is producing, and you're like, oh well, I guess we have enough money to put in a CGI dragon,
right?
As part of the decor.
Yeah, exactly. Background decoration.
Look, this movie. Fair about this movie has a pretty impressive talent. Like Nomi Rapace is in it. I mean, like I mentioned before, Joel Egerton. Edgar Ramirez, who is a fantastic Venezuelan actor, and obviously Will Smith, and David Ayer, who's, I mean, it's questionable right now because he did Suicide Squad, but he's been part of like screenwriting. He directed Sabotage, and he's done a lot of these cop dramas. You know what I mean? So there was plenty of time to make a film that actually felt like it almost kind of feels like there's a reason why you still go to the cinema to catch feature films, and Netflix still hasn't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
It might, and I'm not sure if it's because they're the development stages. They still think in terms of these movies kind of feeling like a pilot. Because so far, that's what I've gotten from their films.
Well, I mean, it is their intention was to turn it into some kind of franchise starter, which, like I mentioned in my review, if this is the start to the franchise with the reaction that it's gotten, I can only see that the next movie in the series is going to have a lower budget, and even if you get a better writer and better director to work on it, it's still going to have a lower budget movie set in this half fantasy world. I don't think that's going to do any good for that film. Like, if they really can't commit the $80-90 million to do the next one, I think they should put it on the chopping block and get rid of it, because they're not going to do that franchise any favors.
Well, Netflix seems to be fully invested in this. Like, they already greenlit the sequel.
And is it with Will Smith?
Yeah, both Will Smith and Joel Edgerton are signed up for.
See, I prefer they spin it off to other characters in the same universe. Like these people had their thing. It's over. What else happens in this universe? Because I really I wasn't invested in the 2 hours that I saw a movie. I never got invested in them. I have no interest in spending another 2 hours in probably some other mediocre, less funded project. You know, where Will Smith is going to phone it in again because he needs his paycheck.
And actually, I don't mind. Like I said, this could work as kind of like if you handle it for what it is, kind of like a cheesy but fun, sci-fi channel type show. There's some merit in what you could do with this
Sure,
story.
it's not a
You know
bad
what I mean?
idea. I said that in my review. I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was a decent idea. It's just the execution was garbage.
Oh, this accused is garbage, and the fact about it, like if you're already handling something that's a little bit, to be honest, it's a little ridiculous. I mean, you kind of have to deliver something that's a little bit more that you get more invested in. So it takes away from the fact that there's like fairies in the patio of your house that you gotta kill like a mosquito.
Yeah, what was that too? That's murder. That's a
Yeah,
humanoid creature, and
I
he
thought
just
that was
straight up
kind of,
kills it.
I thought that was weird too. Like I thought a fairy was it's not like an insect or anything like
No,
that. I just think
no.
this was a tree like that, but
And he just squashes it, and it's like whatever. And then the guy, the gangster guy living next to him is, oh, go do what you LAPD do. It's like, so you're a cop, and then you're gonna do what the gangster said you do, which is just go and indiscriminately kill a thing of another race or species, just because. Like
yeah, I found that to be a little bit odd.
you're a bad representative for your police station if that's the way you handle shit. And then you know what's actually one thing I noticed that it was what was the production company that was at the beginning? Trigger Warning Productions.
Uh huh.
I think they really should have had a few trigger warnings if we're going to go that route with movies, because I think Will Smith doing a Shrek joke to the orcs. How dissimilar is that to making an ethnic joke or an ethnic slur against? So, but since it's a fictional character, it doesn't matter. No, in that world, they're not fictional. So you're actually calling, you're using an ethnic slur against another species. That's kind of a dick move. And this is the guy I'm supposed to be rooting for?
Well, I mean, I ultimately like this. The whole thing about orcs is like obviously a representation of like minorities
Yeah, and that's
in
what
a
makes
lot of
it
ways. You know what I
worse.
mean?
Is you have this cop using an ethnic slur or a comparison that's kind of like an ethnic slur against another character, another orc. It's like, how is that a good idea? I mean, you would think a company named Trigger Warning Productions would understand what trigger warnings are for and wouldn't add something that could be triggering like that.
Well, we're not getting any orc slice matters movement anytime soon, so
Well, no. That's the other thing he says too. Fairy lives. What is it? Fairy lives don't matter this morning. What? This is the writing we have for this from a company called Trigger Warning Productions? I mean, come on. What is that? Once I piece those two together, I'm like, what are you thinking? What is the thought process here?
it's the fact about it's really bizarre how this whole thing came about. Like how like fairies, right? Fairy elves. I'm sorry, elves ended up
Yeah.
becoming like the upper echelon of like society, and
Well, I
then like
noticed too that they have
orcs are
the
in the
elves only
lower rung.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, and then orcs are in the lower rung, and not sure what role humans play. They're kind of like all spread out, I guess. I mean, fairies are kind of like creatures that you can stomp
They're
on. They're kind of
bugs,
like they were
essentially.
bugs or what, essentially. So I'm not sure. It's a very bizarre
See, I
and
think
pretty there's not a lot of like I said, this is really feel there's a lot of a backbone for backstory for reasons. No, there is a backstory, but there's not a lot of reasons why these things are there and how they
right.
actually play out the overall plot. I mean, they could have developed later as the story went along, or maybe even
Sure.
sequels. But for this particular movie, I'm not sure what it really helped it.
No, it didn't. No, see, if you're gonna take, okay, so the elves become the upper class kind of management things, and the orcs, being the orcs, are the grunts. If you're gonna treat it that way, that's fine. But what I would like to have seen is maybe instead of a cop drama, maybe have it where the orcs are taking over our like our military professional field, and they
Well,
are the foot soldiers because they're foot soldiers.
but I think that what they were trying to allude with the Joel Edgerton character, the main orc, was that he was apparently, it seems like he was adopted or or for some reason he ended up in some sort of suburban uh you upbringing, and then he was motivated to do something that was a little bit more in tune with authority, becoming a police officer. I think that's what perhaps the whole thing with him not having
Well,
you
and
know
he also composted
exactly, so probably that's where it they were trying
because
to allude to that.
that's a character builder right there. And now another thing that you brought up is Alienation and Bright both have two.
Our character now, no, okay, right now.
Both Alienation and Bright have two really good actors as underused villains. Because you have Terrence Stamp in Alien Nation, who I think is cool as hell. However, that costume must have been really uncomfortable for him because every shot that he's in, and I apologize to Terrence Stamp, he looked like he had a stick up his ass. He looked so uncomfortable for some reason in every shot. And then also Numi Rapace, great actor, and she's so obscenely underused in this. I mean, anybody could have been that character.
It is unfortunate because she is very talented.
She is very talented, and she looked cool. But it's like you could have thrown. You didn't have to pay a Numi Rapace salary for that. You could have paid any like independent film actress that could at least hold her own for that role. Save the money, and you would have gotten the same performance and the same character because there was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
It's I want the one. That's character motivation. That's character history. That's everything. I want the wand. That's everything right there for that character. And it's like, really? That's it? And I mean, and also, I mean, I'm not gonna blow, smoke up Alien Nation's ass. Terrence Stamp's character is not very complex either. He's like a businessman who, redesigned a drug that they used to use to enslave people, and his goal is to just enslave them again. That's it. So they're two sadly underused, really good actors in the role of the antagonist. However, the difference is that I think Bright really could have used a more interesting antagonist, where Alien Nation I don't really think needed a more interesting antagonist because it was more about the relationship between the cop, between James Caan and George, and their situation and the differences between species. Will Smith didn't want to have anything to do with the orc, and then they got stuck in a situation. That's it. That's the extent of their relationship, of building that relationship.
But that's also together. It's like that film has, you go with the situation with the corrupt officers that want to get rid of the orc and want to kill Will Smith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's dealt with in like what, like even
first 40 minutes,
like 50, for first things they deal with. Then you get the film with the wand. Then you get involved like the
gangsters that wanted the wand
and the orc gangster. It's kind of like I said, there wasn't any real room for her character to even grow. It's so saturated, like all the
there's so much other noise that you can't get to.
So much noise to get to that you could once you get to her character, it's like, oh, somebody else that wants to like kill them or something.
Right. No, and she can do a few flips. And by the way, I love it how these elves that she has, including herself, when they have a machine gun, they can shoot every person with one bullet until they aim at the orc or Will Smith. And then I don't know if when orcs shave down their tusks, or if Will Smith's aura of cool has some special power that they don't talk about in this universe, but the bullets kind of just whiz by them. maybe they're aiming direct, but the bullet just kind of aims this way and it just spins off this way because of some superpower that we're not, given any indication of. Because holy crap, they can't hit their targets once they start chasing Will Smith in the yard.
Well, wasn't he a Bright at the end of the movie? Like,
oh, that's right. That's right. He was a
with that.
bright.
That came out of nowhere, by the way.
That's right. He was a bright. No, was he or like half bright or something?
I don't know what he was, but he was able to hold a wand.
Yeah. Right.
So stupid.
I don't know. It seems pretty dim to me.
Oh, it's such a stupid movie.
It was really. It wasn't very bright.
No.
Jesus Christ. I don't know, man. I just thought like I mean, I guess if Netflix is gonna stick with it, but this is where typically a studio would drop that movie and not do any more. Mm-hmm. And this is where I would say this is how you see the difference between a franchise starter and a franchise non-starter. Is because I feel like Bright shouldn't go anywhere. It happened. Let's forget about it. Alien Nation did go on to do some interesting, cheesy but interesting stuff.
Well, but it became a TV show.
And 3 TV movies.
Oh, that's true.
So there was plenty there to discuss, and they did.
I think Bright should be a TV show. I mean, based on like the universe they're trying to explore, and also, let's be honest, kind of like based on a little bit of the cheesiness behind it all. You know what I mean? Like, it could work in a serial basis. I think
you're right. I think if they're going to continue the cop drama thing, it should be a TV series. But if they're going to keep doing like we're going to do a couple feature film things, I say move away from the cops and explore something else.
Yeah, it'd probably be a interesting idea. But we were talking this off camera too. Like, what's like a friend of mine pointed out to me once I gave my review this morning about my mention of how I felt about the movie. Like, he liked it and he says that it was interesting. It was like, look, it's a simple story. It's a funny movie, has some action, and he liked it for those aspects. And I don't disagree with him that those aspects are there.
Yeah, but was it funny?
Not really. I didn't find it funny.
I don't remember laughing.
Do you think that is anybody kind of like who's right now is Brian like the fun movie or like the like talk about Alien Nation, right? It's a movie done in like what in '88. It's like 30 years ago. There were plenty of movies like that in that era, even in the '90s. Where it was kind of like you could just write that one-off fun buddy movie or that fun action film. It doesn't have to go in. It doesn't have to become like this sprawl into a franchise or a sequel. It doesn't have to create a complicated world.
Oh, there are no more one-offs anymore.
Yeah,
I mean everything has to try to be a series of movies, a series of sequels, or a TV series, or nothing is like the miniseries is dead. That's something that died a long time ago. Nobody does like, hey, here's 6 episodes of this project. It's a miniseries. Once it's over, it's done and it's gone. Nobody does that anymore.
HBO's done it with True Detective. I guess that would be kind of
there's
like
2 seasons of that. So they did want to keep doing seasons.
Well, that's true. They just wanted to change it from like one story to the other.
Well, it's like American Horror Story. You have the same cast, but it's different roles and stuff.
Yeah, there's been some of that, but in terms of film, and I guess going back to the Bright thing, it's like I think there was enough material there where you could just focus on it just being kind of like a one-off. And if it expands to a sequel, then so be it. Because you can add those elements later.
Sure, but make it the best one-off that you can.
Exactly. Make it the best one-off that you can. It's already enough building these two leads and understanding how they go from being begrudged towards becoming friends.
Sure.
And I think that, like you said, maybe like you had the the MacGuffin with the wand and the elves that are behind it. That in itself would have been enough material to carry your movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of feel like they wanted to just kind of like compress every single element, every single element of this universe into one 2-hour film. Which, to be honest, film could have been a good half hour shorter.
But they didn't even cover anything of the universe.
I mean,
Aside from saying that there's elves and then showing a couple elves, saying that fairy lives don't matter, showing that there's orcs and there's some issue with their tusks. Aside from that, they didn't do any other world building. That's it. It's like, okay, these things exist in this universe. How?
and everything's also bizarre. It's like based on the mythology, it's like supposedly what condemned the orcs was that they chose evil 2,000 years ago,
Right.
and that's why they're still kind of like in the lower rung of society. But then you gotta tell me that in 2,000 years, where they've actually learned your language, they've actually learned your customs, they've adapted themselves to modern society, there's not gonna be some orcs to spread into some positions of power at this point. Like the fact that
Right.
it's like the one cop that shows out of nowhere is kind
Well,
of
I don't
like,
think was the idea that they've been here for 2,000 years. I thought they made that decision 2,000 years ago, but the merging of realities was something sooner that happened.
oh, that key.
See
Well,
that, but
maybe
that's how
I stand
shitty the world
corrected.
building is. Seriously, that's how shitty it is. We're here trying to guess what it was. I
That
can
was
tell
my
you in
understanding.
Alienation they crashed 20 years before, I believe, and there was I think like what 25 million of them on the ship.
Hmm.
It's more information than you get on how many orcs there are, how many elves there are, how many other species there are. Are there trolls? There's dragons. There's fairies. Are there wizards? Does Hogwarts exist on Ellis Island now? Like, you, I don't know. We can all guess. I mean, I guess that's all. They leave it open like that so they can make up whatever bullshit they want for the next sequel. But that's not good world building.
No, I really, I think there's a lot, of, a lot of room, to question decisions behind this movie and the construction of its universe.
Yeah, I don't know. I will point out. I'll do a little fan conspiracy theory that I have for Alien Nation, and I want to point out there's a car chase in
Are,
Alien
are
Nation.
there fans of Alien Nation still?
Yes, me. Oh wait, no, me and one person in our comment section, which I should read. They say San Francisco #1, love it, and then the script for Alien Nation was better than Bright. We agree, and I guess it was what we were talking about the orc. Sorry, he's not very bright. Ha ha ha. There was a continuity error in Alien Nation that I found kind of funny. These two cars are so the cops are chasing the bad guys that are in a cop car, and they're smashing him against the rails to get him
Mhm.
off the highway. And in the next shot, the cars are reversed, and the cop car just spins off. And I'm like, wait, wasn't he being squished against the wall? So I rewound, and yeah, they're like the cop car's here, and they're like against the thing, and all of a sudden he's here, and he just goes woo, and he takes off. It's like, what the fuck just happened? So I thought that was kind of funny. Now here's my little
That's fun.
conspiracy theory,
Uh huh.
and I got a graphic for it. Tell me these two guys don't look the same, and then I'll tell you what my theory is.
I don't see the image. No. Hold on for a second. Okay. Actually, let me go on my phone real quick. All right, so I'm in YouTube. Where do I go? Hmm. 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 Oh, I mean, it's a pretty interesting fan theory. Perhaps the first and only one alienation we'll have. So I'm glad that you constructed this. I'm glad you took the time to come up with this theory.
It took me
Or like
weeks. Weeks.
you and the one dude that's hitting a comment section about how much he likes San Francisco. Yeah, but I liked Alienation when I saw it, like all those many years ago. You know, what I mean, the TV show was cool. You know what I mean?
I
So,
liked it. I mean, I haven't seen. I found the second season of the TV series, so I haven't watched the first season because I don't know where the hell it is.
mhm.
But I liked it. I thought it was a cool series.
Yeah, man, it was fun and it was cool. You know, like the characters were likable. You know, it's a body
Well, and
cop
then there's the
drama.
whole thing too, where it's like the aliens. They Salt water is like battery acid to them, or like hydrochloric acid.
Hmm.
It melts them, and that ties into the end where James Caan falls into the water, and the only way to save him as he's drowning is that the alien has to shove his hand inside seawater and have it start melting off to save him. So that was a nice little extra thing. I mean, that's even a character building part towards like the middle of the movie
If
where
it would have been in Bright, that would have never come to any type of.
no,
It would have not been part of the story.
it would have, yeah,
Part of the
it wouldn't
climax.
have evolved into anything.
It's just there.
Yeah. And instead, it's actually part of the character or the relationship building between the two characters. Because there's a part where James Caan's character is sent out to investigate a murder of an alien that was thrown in the ocean to melt him. And as he's driving towards the ocean, you see George is in a panic, and he's like, "No," like just stop the car, stop the car, stop the car. And the guy's like, "What?" Like relax, and he's like, "No, stop the car, stop the car." He's like, "Okay, I'll drop you off." And he drops him off, and then the other detectives make fun of him for it, but he drops him off because I mean look at it like that for us. Would you want to go investigate a murder that's in front of a giant, 6 trillion-gallon tank of hydrochloric acid? I don't know. I'd feel a little uncomfortable.
I would say this: it would be pretty. If that was a hazard for that particular alien species, they picked the wrong city to live in because they live in San Francisco. It's like in the Bay.
Not only that, but let me tell you, what is it, 80% or 70% water? It's 70% ocean on Earth. And they managed to land on the 30% that wouldn't melt their faces off or crash. They managed to crash on the 30% that wouldn't melt their faces off. So I say they're pretty damn lucky.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so well, we're almost at an hour.
Already?
Yep. You have any closing thoughts?
Wow. Pretty much this stream has gone longer than Alienation almost. Alienation is like an hour and a half.
Right? We go for 20 more minutes and we made it.
Yeah, then again, we were talking about Bright, which is 2 hours. So hopefully we made it something more compelling than that.
Hopefully we actually entertained for this hour and weren't getting people to want to walk away like I was.
I guess my if there's a final thought is Joe Egerton, even though he was in Bright, and I think that his could have been done more of his character, but he is a pretty good actor, filmmaker. He was obviously he's done some interesting choices like The Gift, It Comes at Night. He was also in Warrior. He actually was his original story is the basis of The Rover, a movie that you particularly liked a lot. And it was. I guess everybody needs to make a paycheck movie once in a while, and
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't even call this a paycheck movie for him. I could see how he would have read this character and thought, "Wow, this could be something cool to do." It's just it didn't evolve past the very basic script that they had.
That's true. I mean, I don't think he gave a bad performance per se. Like I think he was fine with what he was given.
Yeah. And as far as since you mentioned some of the positives from somebody involved with Bright, I'll mention that, and I'm going to mess up his name. I know it. Rock with an N. S. O'Bannon, the creator of Alien Nation, the screenwriter for it, also created Farscape, and the sci-fi TV series that ended about 2 years ago called Defiance.
Hmm.
So he's pretty good. Farscape was really good. I
Yeah,
really
so
enjoyed
I
it.
hear I never actually seen it, but
I'll say
I know.
this: Farscape, power through the first season. Not that it's bad, but it doesn't look like it has any kind of overarching story. But once you get to the end of the first season, there is like a lot of overarching story that goes
Mhm.
throughout the series. But that first season just looks like it's episodic, and it's not.
Yeah, yeah, I'll check it out one of these days for sure. Once I catch up with my Twin Peaks and my I got another show, The Nick, with Clive Owen. I gotta check that out too. So, but I'll definitely take a look.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'm done. Good to go.
All right, man.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching our stream on Bright versus Alien Nation. Make sure to subscribe, like, and of course, leave any comments, and we'll try to reply to every comment that we get because we get so many for our second episode. So many. Anyways, yeah, like, subscribe, share. Thanks for showing up. Thanks, John.
All right, peace.